Welcome to the most exciting coin discovery of your life. Today, we're diving into the mysterious and ultra-rare bicentennial coins, an ordinary-looking coin with the power to make you a millionaire overnight. If you've got this hidden gem in your pocket, your entire future could change in an instant. Let's unlock the secrets behind this legendary piece of treasure. First up, in the vast world of coin collecting, some of the most fascinating discoveries begin with a small, worn piece of metal that many people would overlook. The 1943 5-cent coin struck at the United States Mint in Philadelphia is one of those pieces that carries a story far greater than its size. At first glance, a scratched and naturally toned example might seem ordinary, but beneath that aged surface lies a connection to one of the most dramatic periods in American history. The 1943 issue belongs to the famous wartime generation of nickels produced during World War II, when the United States government made extraordinary changes to coinage in order to preserve strategic metals for the war effort. Because of these circumstances, this humble 5-cent piece became one of the most historically significant coins of the 20th century, and today certain examples command serious attention among collectors. To understand why the 1943 coin matters so much, we need to step back into the wartime United States. In 1943, the country was fully mobilized. Factories were producing tanks and aircraft around the clock, and metals such as nickel were considered critical military resources. Nickel was essential for armor plating and weapon manufacturing, so the government decided to remove it from the 5-cent coin entirely. The solution was a temporary alloy made of 35% silver, 56% copper, and 9% manganese. This meant that the wartime nickels of 1942 through 1945 are technically silver coins, an unusual characteristic for a denomination that had traditionally contained none. To help the public identify the new alloy, the mint added a large mint mark above the building on the reverse, something never done before for this denomination. This coin belongs to the beloved Jefferson nickel series, first introduced in 1938 to replace the Buffalo nickel. The design was created by German-American sculptor Felix Schlag, who won a national competition organized by the Mint. His design honored the third President of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, whose portrait appears on the obverse. Schlag's interpretation showed Jefferson facing left, a calm and dignified portrait that reflected the neoclassical style popular in American coinage at the time. The reverse featured Jefferson's famous Virginia estate, Monticello, rendered with strong architectural symmetry. When the wartime alloy was introduced, the overall design remained the same, but the large mint mark above Monticello dramatically changed the coin's appearance and instantly made these wartime issues stand out to collectors. The 1943 nickel from the Philadelphia Mint carries the large P mint mark above Monticello, marking the first time the Philadelphia facility placed its identifying letter on circulating coinage. Official production numbers were enormous, with more than 271 million coins struck that year in Philadelphia alone. At first glance, such a high mintage might suggest that the coin is common and inexpensive. However, experienced collectors know that mintage numbers tell only part of the story. Survival rates, the number of coins that remain in collectible condition today, are far more important. Many wartime nickels circulated heavily during the 1940s and 1950s, and countless examples were later melted or lost, especially after the silver content became widely known. When we examine the survival rate more closely, the rarity picture becomes more interesting. While millions technically survive, the number of coins with strong strikes, original surfaces, and minimal damage is dramatically smaller. Wartime nickels were often struck from heavily used dies because the mint prioritized quantity over perfection during wartime production. As a result, weak steps on Monticello and soft details are extremely common. Collectors pay a premium for coins with sharp architectural lines and clearly defined, full steps on the Monticello staircase. Even a scratched and toned specimen can be intriguing if it shows unusual die characteristics or a rare minting error that sets it apart from the millions of ordinary examples. Several varieties and striking anomalies are known within the 1943 issues. These include doubled dies where design elements appear slightly duplicated due to misalignment during the hubbing process, repunched mint marks where the large P was struck more than once, and dramatic die cracks caused by intense production stress during wartime minting. Off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and lamination errors also appear occasionally. While most circulated examples show simple wear and contact marks, certain varieties, especially strong doubled dies, have become highly sought after. Even coins that spent decades in circulation can become valuable if they display one of these distinctive characteristics. Understanding how these minting errors occur helps explain why collectors value them so highly. During the coin-making process, a master hub presses the design into working dies that will strike thousands of coins. If the hub shifts slightly during this process, a doubled die can result, leaving a permanent doubling on every coin produced by that die. In earlier decades, mint marks were sometimes punched by hand into the die after it was created, which occasionally caused repunched mint marks when the punch was applied more than once. Wartime production placed enormous pressure on the mint's equipment, and the constant use of dies led to cracks, chips, and other imperfections that now serve as identifying markers for collectors studying specific die varieties. Surface preservation is another critical factor when evaluating a 1943 nickel. A scratched coin with natural tunning tells a very different story from a coin that has been aggressively cleaned. Natural tunning often develops from decades of storage in paper envelopes or coin albums and can produce beautiful shades of gray, gold, or even violet on the silver alloy surface. Cleaning, on the other hand, can permanently damage the coin's microscopic texture and reduce its collector value. Professional grading services carefully evaluate originality, wear, and strike quality, assigning grades that help establish market value. Even a circulated example with scratches may still hold interest if the surfaces remain authentic and unaltered. Market values for the 1943 P nickel vary widely depending on condition and variety. In lower circulated grades such as fine or very fine, a typical coin might sell for only a modest premium over its silver value. In about uncirculated condition with attractive tunning, prices increase significantly, especially if the coin displays strong strike details. Uncirculated coins certified by grading services, particularly those with full steps, can reach hundreds or even thousands of dollars in competitive markets. Rare varieties and dramatic minting errors command even stronger prices, especially when they appear in well-preserved examples that combine rarity with visual appeal. At the highest levels of the hobby, registry set competition pushes prices even further. Collectors assembling top-ranked sets of wartime nickels often compete fiercely for the finest certified examples available. When a coin emerges with exceptional strike quality, flawless surfaces, and documented provenance, auction houses can witness intense bidding. Record-setting sales typically involve coins graded near the top of the population reports, sometimes representing the finest known example. These pieces become trophies within the collecting community, demonstrating how rarity, condition, and historical context can combine to elevate a simple 5-cent coin into a remarkable collectible. In the end, the scratched and toned 1943 Philadelphia 5-cent coin reminds us that extraordinary stories can hide within the most ordinary objects. Born during wartime metal shortages, struck with an unusual silver alloy, and marked with a historically significant mint mark, it represents a unique chapter in American coinage. For collectors, its value lies not just in the metal or the mintage numbers, but in the complex intersection of history, minting technology, preservation, and collector demand. Under the right circumstances, especially when rare varieties or exceptional preservation are involved. This small wartime nickel can transform from everyday pocket change into a fascinating and highly valued artifact of American history. Second, in the world of coin collecting, some of the most fascinating treasures are not the ones that shine the brightest, but the ones that carry the deepest stories. The 1944 5-cent coin struck in Philadelphia is a perfect example. At first glance, a scratched and naturally toned specimen may appear ordinary, perhaps even overlooked among piles of pocket change. But collectors know that the 1944 nickel is part of a remarkable chapter in American numismatic history. Produced by the United States Mint during the height of World War II, this coin belongs to the famous wartime nickels that were struck with an unusual silver alloy. What makes certain examples extraordinary today is not only their wartime origin, but also the rare varieties, exceptional preservation, and collector demand that can transform a humble 5-cent piece into a highly sought-after collectible. To understand the significance of the 1944 issue, we must imagine the United States in the middle of a global conflict. In 1944, the nation was fully engaged in the war effort, with massive industrial production supporting Allied forces across Europe and the Pacific. Nickel metal was considered strategically important for military equipment, particularly in the production of armor and specialized alloys. Because of this, the government temporarily removed nickel from the 5-cent coin. Instead, the coin was produced with a wartime alloy of 35% silver, 56% copper, and 9% manganese. This change created a unique generation of coins that look similar to earlier nickels but contain silver, something that immediately caught the attention of later collectors once the historical significance became widely understood. The 1944 wartime issue belongs to the long-running Jefferson nickel series, which debuted in 1938. The design was created by sculptor Felix Schlag after he won a national design competition. His work honored the third President of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, whose portrait appears prominently on the obverse. Schlag's portrait of Jefferson is both simple and dignified, reflecting the classical style popular in American coinage of the time. On the reverse, the coin features Monticello, Jefferson's historic Virginia estate, rendered with balanced architectural detail. Wartime nickels introduced a distinctive feature, a large mint mark placed above Monticello's dome, making it easy to identify the silver alloy coins. The 1944 nickel produced at the Philadelphia Mint carries a bold P mint mark above Monticello. In fact, this period marked the first time the Philadelphia Mint used a mint mark on circulating coinage, making these coins historically distinctive. Official records show that more than 119 million pieces were struck in Philadelphia in 1944. At first glance, such a large mintage might suggest the coin is common and inexpensive. However, experienced collectors understand that mintage numbers alone rarely determine rarity. What truly matters is how many coins survive today in collectible condition, especially those that escaped heavy circulation or damage over the decades. Survival rate plays a crucial role in determining value. While millions of 1944 nickels were produced, the majority circulated extensively during the 1940s and 1950s. Wartime coins were heavily used in everyday commerce, and many eventually developed scratches, wear, and discoloration. Some were even melted decades later when their silver content became widely known. As a result, truly well-preserved examples are far less common than the mintage figures might suggest. Collectors also pay close attention to strike quality. Many wartime nickels were struck quickly under intense production pressure, leading to weak details on Monticello's steps. Coins with sharply defined, full steps on the building are significantly rarer and can command impressive premiums in the marketplace. The 1944 nickel is also known for a range of intriguing varieties and minting anomalies. Some coins show doubled dies, where design elements such as lettering appear slightly duplicated due to misalignment during the die creation process. Others feature repunched mint marks, a result of the large P being impressed into the die more than once. Die cracks, lamination errors, clip planchets, and off-center strikes occasionally appear as well. These minting quirks, once considered defects, are now highly collectible features that add individuality to specific coins. A circulated coin with a dramatic error can sometimes attract more attention than an ordinary uncirculated example. Understanding how these varieties occur requires a look inside the minting process itself. Coins begin with master hubs that transfer the design onto working dies. If the hub shifts slightly during this process, a doubled die is created, producing coins with visible duplication in certain design elements. During the 1940s, mint marks were sometimes punched by hand into the dies, which could result in repunched mint marks if the punch moved or was applied more than once. Wartime production conditions also placed tremendous strain on equipment. Dies were often used longer than usual, which led to cracks and other imperfections that now help specialists identify specific die varieties among surviving coins. Surface preservation is another critical element in determining the desirability of a 1944 nickel. A scratched but naturally toned coin can still be attractive to collectors if the surfaces remain original. Over time, the silver-based alloy often develops subtle shades of gray, gold, or bluish toning that reflect decades of storage and circulation. Cleaning, however, can permanently damage the surface texture and significantly reduce collector appeal. Because of this, many collectors rely on professional grading services to evaluate authenticity, preservation, and strike quality. These grading companies encapsulate the coin and assign a standardized grade, which helps buyers and sellers understand the coin's approximate condition in the market. Market values for the 1944 P wartime nickel vary widely depending on grade and rarity. Circulated coins in fine or very fine condition typically trade for modest amounts, often reflecting both their silver content and collector interest. Coins in about uncirculated condition with appealing natural toning can bring noticeably higher prices. Uncirculated examples certified in mint state grades are far scarcer and can sell for hundreds of dollars, especially when strong strike quality is present. Coins with the coveted full steps designation or dramatic minting errors may achieve even higher results in auctions, sometimes reaching into the thousands when collectors compete for the best-known examples. At the highest level of the hobby, registry set competition has played a major role in driving prices upward. Collectors assembling complete sets of wartime nickels often strive to obtain the finest certified example available for each date and mint mark combination. When an exceptional 1944 P coin appears, particularly one with full steps and pristine surfaces, it can ignite intense bidding at major auctions. Record prices are usually achieved by coins that combine rarity, superior strike, outstanding preservation, and documented provenance. These factors create a perfect storm of collector interest, turning what was once a common wartime coin into a celebrated numismatic prize. In the end, the scratched and toned 1944 Philadelphia 5-cent coin reminds us that value in the coin world is rarely about size or denomination. Instead, it emerges from history, rarity, and the subtle details preserved within each surviving piece. Born during a time when the United States was fighting a global war and conserving vital resources, the wartime nickel carries a story far beyond its 5-cent face value. Under the right circumstances, when rarity, condition, and collector demand align, this small silver alloy coin can become a remarkable artifact of American history and one of the most fascinating treasures in the world of numismatics. Third, in the vast world of coin collecting, some of the most fascinating stories begin with coins that appear worn, scratched, and ordinary. The 1945 5-cent coin struck in Philadelphia is one of those pieces whose true importance reveals itself only when history, rarity, and collector demand come together. A naturally toned, circulated example might look like nothing more than an old nickel pulled from a forgotten drawer, yet this small coin was produced during one of the most dramatic moments in American history. Struck by the United States Mint in the final year of World War II, the 1945 P nickel belongs to the famous wartime silver nickels. For collectors today, these coins represent more than spare change. They are artifacts from a period when the United States reshaped even its everyday currency to support a global war effort. The year 1945 marked a turning point for the United States and the world. After years of conflict, Allied forces pushed toward victory in both Europe and the Pacific. Factories that once produced civilian goods had been transformed into engines of wartime production, supplying tanks, aircraft, and weapons in massive quantities. Metals such as nickel were vital to military manufacturing, especially for armor plating and specialized alloys used in combat equipment. Because of this strategic importance, the U.S. government removed nickel from the 5-cent coin between 1942 and 1945. Instead, these coins were struck using an unusual wartime alloy of 35% silver, 56% copper, and 9% manganese. The result was a unique generation of coins that look familiar but contain precious metal, an unexpected characteristic that would later draw the attention of collectors around the world. The 1945 wartime issue belongs to the celebrated Jefferson nickel series, which first appeared in 1938. The design was created by the sculptor Felix Schlag, whose work won a national competition organized to replace the Buffalo nickel. Schlag's design honored the third President of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, whose portrait appears on the obverse of the coin. The profile is simple yet dignified, capturing Jefferson in a calm, thoughtful pose that reflects classical artistic influence. On the reverse, the coin displays Monticello, Jefferson's famous Virginia estate. The building's symmetrical architecture and the inscription, Monticello, give the reverse a distinctive identity that collectors immediately recognize. The wartime nickels introduced one particularly striking feature, an oversized mint mark placed above Monticello's dome. This change made it easy for the public to identify coins struck from the special silver alloy. The 1945 coin produced at the Philadelphia Mint carries a large P mint mark in this location, an unusual detail because Philadelphia traditionally did not use a mint mark on circulating coins. Official production numbers show that approximately 119 million 1945 P nickels were struck. At first glance, such a large mintage might suggest the coin is common. However, collectors know that mintage numbers alone rarely determine rarity. The true measure of scarcity depends on how many coins survive today in collectible condition, especially those that escaped heavy wear or damage. Survival rate plays a major role in shaping the coin's value. While millions of 1945 P nickels were originally minted, the majority entered circulation immediately and were used extensively for decades. These coins traveled through countless transactions in shops, factories, and military bases during the war years. Over time, many became scratched, worn, or chemically altered. Some were even melted in later decades when people realized the coins contained silver. As a result, examples with strong details and attractive surfaces are far less common than the original mintage might suggest. Collectors particularly prize coins with sharply defined architectural steps on Monticello, known as full steps, because most wartime nickels were struck quickly under intense production pressure and lack this level of detail. The 1945 P nickel also attracts attention because of the variety of minting anomalies associated with the issue. Some coins display doubled dies, where certain letters or numbers appear duplicated due to slight movement during the hubbing process used to create the dies. Others show repunched mint marks, where the large P was struck more than once into the die, leaving visible traces of multiple impressions. Die cracks caused by metal fatigue are also known, as well as occasional off-center strikes and lamination errors where the metal surface partially separates. For collectors who specialize in varieties, these small imperfections transform ordinary coins into unique pieces of minting history. Understanding how these varieties occur requires a closer look at the minting process itself. Each coin begins with a master hub that impresses the design into working dies used for production. If the hub shifts even slightly between impressions, a doubled die can form, permanently transferring the doubled design onto every coin struck from that die. During the 1940s, mint marks were sometimes punched into the dies manually, which occasionally resulted in repunched mint marks when the punch was repositioned or applied more than once. Wartime production placed enormous stress on mint equipment, and dies were often used longer than usual to meet demand. This pressure increased the likelihood of cracks, chips, and other imperfections that today serve as identifying markers for specific die varieties. Another factor that significantly affects value is surface preservation. A scratched and toned 1945 P nickel may still attract collector interest if its surfaces remain original and unaltered. Over decades, the silver alloy often develops natural toning in shades of gray, gold, or even faint blue hues. These colors can enhance the coin's character and authenticity. Cleaning, however, can permanently damage the surface texture and remove the delicate luster that collectors seek. Because of this, professional grading organizations evaluate coins carefully, assigning grades that reflect wear, strike quality, and originality. Their certifications help establish confidence in the market and play an important role in determining a coin's potential value. In terms of market prices, the 1945 P wartime nickel demonstrates how condition can dramatically influence value. Circulated examples graded fine or very fine typically sell for modest premiums above their intrinsic silver value. Coins in about uncirculated condition with appealing natural toning often bring higher prices from collectors who appreciate originality. Uncirculated coins certified in mint state grades can reach significantly higher levels, especially when the strike is strong. Examples with full steps are especially desirable and can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on the grade and overall eye appeal. Rare varieties or dramatic minting errors may command even stronger auction results when collectors compete for unusual specimens. At the highest level of the hobby, registry set competition adds another dimension to the market. Collectors who build complete sets of wartime nickels often strive to acquire the finest certified example for each date and mint mark. When an exceptional 1945 P coin appears at auction, particularly one with pristine surfaces, full steps, and an elite grading score, it can ignite intense bidding among advanced collectors. Record-setting sales typically occur when a coin combines outstanding preservation, rarity, and a well-documented history of ownership known as provenance. These elements together can elevate a small 5-cent coin into a centerpiece of a prestigious collection. In the end, the 1945 Philadelphia wartime nickel demonstrates how extraordinary value can emerge from the most unexpected places. Created during the final chapter of World War II, struck with a silver alloy born from wartime necessity, and shaped by the pressures of massive production, this coin carries a story that extends far beyond its modest denomination. Even a scratched and naturally toned example connects collectors to that dramatic moment in history. Under the right circumstances, when rarity, preservation, and collector demand intersect, this small 5-cent piece can become a remarkable artifact and one of the most intriguing collectibles in American numismatics. Fourth, in the fascinating world of coin collecting, sometimes the most valuable discoveries begin with coins that appear worn, scratched, and forgotten. The 1964 5-cent coin from Philadelphia is one of those pieces whose true story goes far beyond its modest appearance. At first glance, a scratched and naturally toned example might seem like nothing more than a common nickel that's circulated through countless hands. Yet collectors know that the coins struck by the United States Mint during the mid-1960s were produced at a moment when the American monetary system was facing dramatic change. Hidden among millions of ordinary coins are rare varieties, exceptional strikes, and unusual minting anomalies that have turned certain 1964 nickels into prized collectibles capable of attracting serious attention in auctions. The year 1964 was a turning point for the United States in many ways. The nation was navigating a period of political transformation following the assassination of John F. Kennedy the previous year, while major civil rights legislation reshaped American society. At the same time, the country faced a growing coin shortage as silver prices rose, and the public began hoarding coins with precious metal content. Although the 5-cent coin did not contain silver, its production increased dramatically as the government attempted to keep enough coins circulating in everyday commerce. These circumstances led to massive minting operations, extended die usage, and production pressures that inadvertently created a variety of unusual coins that collectors continue to study decades later. The 1964 issue belongs to the long-running Jefferson nickel series, a design introduced in 1938 to replace the earlier Buffalo nickel. The design was created by sculptor Felix Schlag, who won a national competition organized by the Mint. Schlag's portrait of the third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, appears on the obverse in a calm left-facing profile that reflects classical artistic traditions. On the reverse is Monticello, Jefferson's famous Virginia estate, rendered with balanced architectural lines and inscriptions that identify the building and the denomination. For collectors, the elegance and simplicity of this design have made the Jefferson nickel one of the most studied modern American coin series. Coins dated 1964 were produced in enormous numbers at the Philadelphia Mint and other facilities. In fact, Philadelphia alone struck well over 1 billion nickels that year. At first glance, such an enormous mintage would seem to guarantee that the coin is common forever. However, experienced collectors understand that mintage numbers alone rarely determine a coin's true rarity. What matters more is how many coins survived in high quality, and how many display unusual characteristics that separate them from the typical examples that circulated heavily during the 1960s and 1970s. Survival rate plays a crucial role in understanding the coin's collectible value. While millions of 1964 nickels still exist, the vast majority spent years in everyday commerce, collecting scratches, contact marks, and wear along the way. Many were stored in jars or drawers where friction damaged their surfaces. Truly sharp, well-preserved examples with strong design details are far less common than the production numbers might suggest. Collectors especially search for coins with sharply defined steps on Monticello, known as the full steps designation. Because minting dies were often used for extremely long runs in 1964 to meet demand, many coins show weak strikes that blur these details, making fully struck examples far scarcer. Beyond strike quality, collectors also pay attention to the many varieties that can occur within a single year of coinage. Some 1964 nickels display doubled dies, where letters or numbers appear slightly doubled due to misalignment during the die creation process. Others show repunched mint marks or subtle overdates caused by adjustments during die preparation. Die cracks caused by metal fatigue are also seen, as well as occasional off-center strikes and clipped planchets. These minting irregularities may seem minor, but for collectors they represent the unique fingerprint of the minting process, transforming otherwise ordinary coins into distinctive collectible pieces. These varieties originate during the complex process of die creation and coin production. A master hub transfers the design to working dies through immense pressure. If the hub shifts slightly during this process, the result can be a doubled die where elements of the design appear duplicated, In earlier decades, mint marks were punched by hand into dies, sometimes creating repunched impressions when the punch moved or was applied twice. During years of extremely high production like 1964, dies were often used longer than ideal, increasing the likelihood of cracks, chips, and other stress-related anomalies. Each of these imperfections creates subtle differences between coins that specialists can identify decades later. Surface preservation is another factor that determines whether a 1964 nickel becomes desirable to collectors. A scratched coin with natural tunning may still have strong collector appeal if its surfaces remain original. Over time, nickels often develop shades of gray, gold, or bluish tunning depending on how they were stored. These colors can add character and authenticity to a coin. Cleaning, however, can permanently damage the microscopic surface texture and remove the natural luster that collectors value. Professional grading services evaluate these characteristics carefully, assigning standardized grades that help establish the coin's place in the market. Market values for the 1964 Philadelphia nickel vary widely depending on condition and rarity. Circulated coins in grades such as fine or very fine generally trade for modest amounts because of the large surviving population. Coins in about uncirculated condition with attractive tunning can bring higher premiums among collectors seeking eye appeal. Uncirculated examples graded mint state can command significantly stronger prices, particularly when they display sharp strikes and the coveted full steps designation. Certain varieties and dramatic minting errors have sold for hundreds or even thousands of dollars at auction when collectors compete for the most unusual or best-preserved specimens. At the highest levels of the hobby, registry set competition adds another dimension to the coin's value. Collectors assembling complete Jefferson nickel sets often pursue the finest graded examples available for each date. When a top-grade 1964 nickel appears at auction, especially one with exceptional strike quality and flawless surfaces, it can ignite intense bidding. Record prices are typically achieved by coins that represent the finest known examples, often supported by detailed grading records and strong collector demand. Provenance and historical significance can also add prestige, turning a small coin into a centerpiece within a world-class collection. In the end, the scratched and toned 1964 Philadelphia nickel demonstrates how extraordinary stories can hide within the most ordinary objects. Despite its humble 5-cent denomination and enormous mintage, the coin reflects a pivotal moment in American monetary history when the country faced coin shortages and rapidly changing economic conditions. For collectors, its true importance lies in the combination of historical context, minting varieties, strike quality, and preservation. Under the right circumstances, this small coin, easily overlooked in everyday change, can become a fascinating collectible whose value reflects not only rarity, but also the enduring passion of those who study and preserve America's numismatic heritage.